Hey Rob, how do you manage it when you have characters that may have major conflict? Like when all the players normally get along and want to play together. For example, a rogue stealing a religious artifact and the cleric finding out. So you've got a group of players that do enjoy each other's company and they want to play together, but there's something that happens between the characters that could cause major conflict. Conflict is literally the heart of all drama. That's one of the major things that you learn when you start studying acting or filmmaking or writing or anything. Like, conflict is literally the heart of everything. There has to be some conflict, otherwise there's no story. And so normally you want that conflict to come from an external source. The big bad guy is doing something that the players want to end or push back against or change in some way. But what happens when the conflict comes from within? It entirely depends on your players and how they handle it, really. It comes down to what happened in session 0, what was talked about, whether people said that they were going to be okay with that sort of thing, inter-party conflict, whether you are having a character that says, oh, I hate Goliaths and all Goliaths are assholes because they killed my family or whatever, and then one player wants to play a Goliath. You talk about that stuff in session 0 to say, like, is this going to be okay? What's going to happen here? Is everybody okay with seeing that sort of tension play out? Maybe that's actually a fantastic thing to throw at a player that's that way inclined, because maybe their character arc is going to be to overcome that hatred of an entire species of people, because they are forced to travel with this one that's actually, you're all right. It's a tough one for sure. Like, when it comes to, use the example you gave, that a rogue steals a religious artifact, the cleric finds out they've done so. I don't think I've had a game. I've not had many like long running games where that hasn't been an issue at some point. I'm trying to think of any of my long running campaigns that I've run where it hasn't been an issue at some point, that one of the characters has done something that one of the other characters has hated. And it's the same in pretty much any media. Like the Justice League, is there ever a story in the Justice League where they're not all at each other's throats, or like arguing over how they should do something? X-Men, is there ever a story in there where they're not all arguing over the best way to do things? Even in real world scenarios, not to get too political, but like usually in any sort of political movement, there is a disagreement of the people who are on the same side of that movement of like how they should best go about doing so, and like, you shouldn't be doing it this way and you shouldn't be doing it that way, we're giving the wrong impression to the people that we're fighting against, whatever. There's always inter-party conflict in real world and stories, and so how you handle it is same as how you handle everything else. You talk to your players, you make sure that you are constantly communicating before the game, during the game, after the game. It's okay to pause at any point and say above table talk, like, can we pause? Can we step out of character for a second and say, is everybody okay? Like, are the tensions here rising in character, or like are they seeping over to out of character at the table tensions? Like, do we want to cut away from this? Do we want to have some sort of divine intervention happen that forces this religious artifact back to where it came from, or is the person playing the cleric actually loving this sort of opportunity to be challenged, as to have their character finally challenged in their beliefs and whether they are strictly right and wrong, and whether it is better for the rogue to have stolen this religious artifact for the greater good, as it were, the greater good. So I handle it the same way as I handle everything else. I make sure that if something is directly affecting another character, like if they are not just stealing a religious artifact to the deity that the cleric worships, but they are literally stealing it from the cleric, that's a different story. That is player versus player. That is an interaction of a direct physical attack on that player. Well, then I will, as I do with all my player versus player stuff, if the rogue tries to pickpocket something from the cleric, I will turn to the cleric character, the cleric player, and say, do you allow this to happen for the sake of story, or would you prefer for that not to happen? Because if you don't want it to happen, it doesn't happen. That's end of. Like, I know there's a lot of DMs that will hate that and call it soft and whatever. That's what the point of a pickpocket check is. If they can do it, they can get away with it. But I'm not here to let the dice decide everything. I'm here to tell a story with my friends and have fun. And if your actions are not fun for this player at the table, then you don't get to have fun at somebody else's expense. End of. So have your fun a different way. Find an NPC to pickpocket. All of my NPCs are always open to be pickpocketed. The player characters are not. So yes, the rogue can steal something from the temple. The cleric can hate that, and then that can inspire incredible roleplay of the characters. Take it to an extreme though, and this character is his quest is to obtain all of these legendary artifacts of some hang-drawn and quartered god that have been spread around the world, and he's trying to assemble them all to create this, to bring this dead god back to life. And the rest of the party don't want that to happen, but they're also trying to assemble the artifacts in order to destroy the artifacts. And then eventually, there's this tension in the group of this guy's clearly evil and he's clearly obtaining all of these artifacts to destroy the world, and we're trying to not. At some point it might come to a head where this character has to become an NPC, and the person playing this character has to create a new character, and that guy finally goes off on his evil plan, and now their story is to track down their old friend and kill him. That is not an example off the top of my head. That is literally what happened in one of my long-running games. Right from the very beginning, one of the characters had told me, I'm an evil guy, and I'm tracking down all these evil things. And while ever he was useful to the rest of the party, they made use of him, and they loved having him around. They were aware of his issues, but they were like, I think we can keep control of him. I think we can keep him under control. And then one day they didn't, and he managed to escape with one of the other artifacts. And at that point, I talked to the player and said, I think it's time that Neelis becomes NPC. And he said, yeah. And so he came up with a new character and joined the party again as somebody who is going to help them work against his old character. So it can work. It can still make a good story. If you've got a question for me or want some advice, or maybe you just want to hear me talk about D&D more, come join me on Twitch. It's free to follow me there, and it's a great way to support me too.